I'll call the personnel meeting to order.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been finance to order. Couple things from the personnel standpoint, we're gonna do, call the order, consider the budget, other business. First of all, you've all heard through yesterday and then today and tomorrow, request personnel for upgrades for new positions, for grade increases and exempt salary requests, promotion requests, and then changes. You'll hear some more today, you'll hear some more tomorrow. On Friday, Danielle will compile those and work with Al to come up with the gross and net costs on that. We can get that data right. Including,
Yeah.
including benefits. So these are benefits. Though.
You need benefits.
They don't have benefits. That, I think that's an important thing to have, so we see the real cost. Yeah. And so you review them with Danielle, maybe, and then when you guys are comfortable that it's all recently compiled, you'll email to us next week. Because finance is the following week, correct, Robert? Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Next.
Next week we get to that way you'll have a week. You'll have a week to go through them, and then at finance you will. We'll walk through them. That was the plan. In case you're thinking you're gonna get it today, we still have your several departments have on the process. Knowing that, we're gonna jump right into the personnel department. And I think the revenue starts on page 4 and 5, right? Anything you want to highlight about page 4 there?
It's all the same as last year. If you have any questions. You know, we did add, soil and water asked to, join the EAP program, so we're working with them to have that connection with EAP now. But they're just paying for it. So that was one change.
Oh, I got it. There. All right, then we go to your expenses and start at the bottom of 34, right?
So really, the only change that I had was in the 40-30 line. $4,000 was taken out compared to last year, and this is due to labor law posters. We buy them every 3 years, so we didn't need to budget for that this year, but it'll be back in 2026.
Okay, gotcha.
Other than that, everything was pretty much the same. I'll get more into like conference things with the travel plan.
Sure.
Everything else going the same.
All right, anybody have any questions on their expenses? Reasonably flat. We'll talk about your travel plans.
So every year there's the New York State Association of Personnel and Civil Service Officers Conference. It is held somewhere in the state. Last year it was Saratoga. This year I think it's Saratoga again. We normally have 2 employees go, and we do request an overnight for that. So, and even if it's local, I still would like to spend the night there since they do have some evening activities. The other conference is the New York State Association of Self-Insured Counties. This they have 2 a year, but really what we do is look at the agenda and look at where it's held, and we try to go more so if it's local rather than trying to stay over. But I did budget for one of the times to possible stay over depending on where it is. And then the HR trainings and seminars are all local. We do just find things that are interesting to us that could help us, like the Public Employer Labor Relation Association has one that's usually local that we go to, and they include civil service items on it. And also the law, so we try to attend those when possible. Those were my three.
Are they all budgeted for?
They are,
Okay. This is their repetition in general.
yeah. Then I do have staffing requests. So. The first one was the benefits specialist of our department. I'm looking at increasing her grade from a 17 to an 18. For knowledge, longevity, and also succession planning with the staff that we currently have. We had a new additional staff that joined us to train with her so that she can learn what Christina does as well. So it's more training that Christine is doing with someone. And just her knowledge is warrants grade 18 that I just.
Correct.
And the other ones, so I have our personnel assistants, which have all started around the same time. Each of them went to the Civil Service Institute and graduated from that. So they did increase their knowledge, and their duties also increased there. So they would then have the responsibilities of a personnel clerk, which the two, the first two would have that hopefully increase in January. And the other one would be July, just based on the time and the title. It would be 2 years in title for that. And the other one was my civil service technician. Again, she's been training the new staff, and her knowledge and longevity in the position is like, you can't compare to anyone. So I was asking for an increase for her to a senior civil service technician.
And those will be all included in the list you sent out.
Yes.
And have everyone pretty much touched base with you on their requests too already?
There's no new ones you think are coming and. That's your way.
Hope not.
Everyone's kind of picked up the
Yeah.
fact that they gotta get you.
Yeah.
Do you have a dollar amount for these increases?
Yeah, a total of 15,180.32.
That's for a cumulative total.
Yes, and that's without the fringe. The rate of pay.
There's no health insurance, just for your retirement. Difference.
But that's saying all these are included in the regular.
They're not. That would be if they were to stay at the same position is what is budgeted, and then if it's approved, then that would be changed in that section.
All the.
And that's how all of-
Yeah, all the
yeah.
requests next week are not included in the budget.
Right.
You're gonna take out the one that I just.
Either,
Or we can know.
You'll take.
right, it's according to how it gets handled.
Yeah.
If it's gonna be in, I put it, take it out, put it back in, but, yeah, whichever we decide.
What about the request for the change in the sewer grade that he wants to do now?
That
Yeah,
I
we
didn't
want
add
to look
to
at that,
that.
I'm sure you did that.
I didn't add it.
No, but it should be on the.
Right.
Because of the.
I'll
change
let
in
you
the-
have that in the next year's budget, yeah.
Yeah, so
Anything we're doing this year, next year.
that should be
And I know
included.
Sue's wrote down some, and I don't know if that's one sheet, some here now.
That is not,
You didn't, no.
we just learned about that
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah, so she mentioned a couple to me that we have to keep track of,
Right,
but not that one.
no,
He also wants to try to fill that this year though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we still need a budget.
Okay,
Right. Right.
so those would be the only two that wouldn't be on that document, I guess, or well, DPW is, but you would have to note it.
Right,
So
yeah,
there, leave it there.
Yep. You good? Any questions for Danielle? Okay. Get to the first out.
Thanks, Danielle. I was trying to argue positions for that dollar amount. If you were wondering why I needed that, no, that's fine. That was what I wanted. Sometimes I think people are like, why? You're not stuck in my head. You don't know what. Nobody wants to be stuck in there. I don't even like being there.
Yeah.
Your thing should be over. I need to just get it.
We're gonna switch chairs. Yeah. You can sit down. I had $1 million.
She was right about it.
That's clear as sun.
Just the powder stuff. We're still in order.
Okay, so we're gonna go to human services. And so, and we have a definition of the minute for August 30th, 2023.
He moved it, I seconded it. Okay. I just saw though, didn't that do for personnel? Ah.
All in favor?
I,
Okay. So we're gonna go to, Rod?
Come on, David.
yes, David.
Mary? Come on up. There you go.
Harry's gonna walk us through our.
He's a rookie, right?
Yeah.
Doing them.
Very nice. Okay, just a couple of things, we said the state aid, somehow, the increase there, that's primarily tied to. The large increase of the. Council getting $500,000 to the opioid fund, to voice. They're coming into the aid and trying to. Will be selling. That's the increase there. Other things. Yeah. We just had a way to, I kept it at 80,000, this year, if we did another payment, it'll probably get around 90. But it's just so hard to predict, because, when they're gonna come back with the payments. You have to have a little reports, and sometimes, not some years, we got for the payments, so it's hard to predict. With the equipment that everyone contractual that recovery, the payback from county makes the Warren County for administering the program. And then the contracts, expenses, again, the Oasis 100% is pretty much tied to the big increase that the county was getting the recently. The recent decrease a little bit in the UMH percentage. And this year, UMH being very available for the school clinics. One of the agencies and the county, a pretty big chunk of that, but they're not continuing it into next year. That's one reason for a little bit of a decrease there. And as far as the criminal expenses, we put 200,000. We didn't really know what it would. I think it's just really going to be whoever the Washington County budget wants it. You never know. Last year very high mission, I think it's going to go.
Reminded those are mandated expenses, so it's really how you want to handle it, whether you want to tap the fund balance as we go through the year if we exceed, or if you want to go with it.
It's basically it.
Anybody have any questions for her?
Yeah, so when we did the tour, they told how Medicaid was gonna start making some of the payments to some of the cases. And of course, that doesn't come through the budget, but do we know the magnitude of the total expense? That's gonna be huge.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's on the Medicaid, we're not seeing it either, right? Saw it.
On the psychiatric expenses there, of course, 22, we had 644,000. We budgeted 250 and we've only used 101, but there's more that are still coming in, right? We're gonna go through that 250 practically, right?
Again, it's very hard to predict, but right now, I think there's one person in, so I think we will expect another bill. Went through a little wall there, where there was no one in Washington County. And
Those the 250, you think gonna cover it? 3 months left. I mean, because since I've been here, we've always run short that month.
Well, we used to put in zero and I mean, at one time.
the chargeback's about $1,000 a day, every one things, 30,000 for each person. So you're getting. Would be okay this.
We could be
Be
okay,
okay.
because even after 6 months, doing it, if it's just one person, be 180.
So they are looking at it, you decrease from 255 to 205, and that be a concern.
Well, and yeah, I know that I think every year we've been here, we've had to dip into contingency or fund balance to make it up, and I just wanted
Better than tax and for.
that's the true.
Yeah.
Yeah. However you want to deal with it, but yeah.
One way or the other.
I need a vote for the stuff next year.
It seems to me like they're doing that like popcorn. Well, it's coming up all the time. You think $5,000 is nothing in there? And that's kind of a estimate, right?
We don't have an actual number yet for this year.
Well, no, I know, but it's.
So have we done it yet?
As people are catching on, they're, it's getting reported more and more and more and more.
Right, but have we done any? That's my question. Since you don't have an actual number, you haven't got a bill for that.
I'll have to check on that. I know we did at least one, maybe two examinations. Again, that's something that the county attorney's office maybe could advise us on. And we kind of pay the bill in our budget for paperwork.
Seems like every time I walk in there, they're just complaining about other. And I'm starting to catch on to that. Also, the people fighting with this process, starting to catch on to that and reporting it. So you got a mandatory evaluation. I did $5,000 seems a little low for the way I worked all that going.
I can take a closer look at it and kind of see how many we've done and sort of what the average cost was, and then talk to county attorneys and
Yeah, I talked to, my point right to the stand, talk to Roger. And see if there's I think talking to him and talking to the sheriff, it seems like the number is steadily increasing here for a while.
Yeah, if we build the program, they'll take advantage of it.
Well,
God bless us.
it's the program is really profitable until people use it. On that, we have no choice.
it's another mandated.
Another man is got to do it. Well, you're gonna keep on before you. Well,
Get back to everyone.
okay.
Yeah, let us know.
I would think, keep an eye on that. Would think that maybe by order 3 or 4 times.
Any other questions for Very well, that's it. Yours. Alan, any questions?
Sorry.
Any questions?
Negative.
Okay. Negative.
I do have a question around. Peter Pear, is that fall under veterans and fall under you, or we?
Funding flows to us and that's represented in here, right? The veterans here.
yes.
They have split that funding now previously, in previous years, it was running through Warren County. But the funding is now evenly split between Warren and Washington. No changes to the program, it's still a joint county program operated, contracted out to Sumiata.
Thank you.
Rob, did you just say that it's in here?
It should be.
I don't think it is.
You think it is?
I don't think it is.
I'll take a
Your
look.
grant's other line is zero.
It should be 96,200. I think is the number.
Yeah, but you said it was in, we talked, you said it was within another line.
No.
Yeah.
No, it should be in your grant line, so if it's in there, I'm gonna hop on, I'll get it correct.
I created another one,
That's what he told.
that's where it comes from.
That's why we couldn't find it, it's the way it considered.
We just passed a resolution to everybody in the grant. Easy fix, easy fix.
So do we need to make a change?
Right, okay.
For Brian.
So take 96
He just needs the amount.
out of the, it's 96 to and it's out of mental health.
Well,
I just need a grant.
typically, we don't budget grants. We come forward in February and do the roll.
But this is a known one. It's going back out.
The current grant is on a state fiscal year. We should wait and roll it over like all the other.
Okay, so there's no expense with it yet.
Well, we won't know what the unspent portion is until the end of the year.
So technically, it's not a grant anymore, it's just state aid funding.
But the one that we're in has a 5/30 or a 3/31 expiration date. It's on a state fiscal.
Yeah, 2 years of it.
You won't know if you're getting another one in April next year.
We claimed under the CFR and that's paid in calendar years.
Do you know if you have the funding for 24? Or if you only, all you know is the one that's active right now, it goes through 3/31. Correct? You don't know that you have next year's funding yet,
No, not yet.
right? So
We haven't seen on the state aid letter, although we know that it's built into the base of the budget, so it's continuing funding.
We won't know
Then I
that.
mean, reason not to expect.
This number usually get to the 24 state aid limit. This one.
I'll work with Brian afterwards.
Any other? Yeah, Matt.
Brian, if the program expenses for the thank you expense come under budget, that money just roll back into general fund balance?
Yes.
And if it's over budget, it would come out of either contingency or general fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go into that. Thank you, Eric. Thanks, Rob. You're up. And,
Page 16, what's that mean?
and then 16, and then that again.
So, this state aid has been increased, to 25,000. For. Forest expenses, items. The only real changes that I requested are a slight increase in my telephone expense. With the addition of a new VSO, we'd like to add a phone line. For same purposes that myself and the deputy director use, these at-home appointments, the internet tethering, I'm not sure what it's called. But basically to be as mobile as possible and to stay in constant communication. As well as allow veterans another avenue of communication. I also was requesting another phone line for bus drivers to be able to check out the phone and use when they do transportations, that way we can stay in constant communication with them. As well, they can use the map applications within Washington County. We have a couple of drivers who know the roads in Washington County extremely well. But we have, another driver who doesn't know all the roads.
And
Yes.
The cell phones would be included in your budget, right? The telephone,
Yeah.
in your telephone line, but the landlines would be IT, so there's no additional,
Right.
okay.
I'm just talking about cellular phone.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
Dues and subscriptions, we stayed the same. We've changed up our accreditations over the last few years, largely due to COVID. But we want to maintain both the accreditations we have with the American Legion and New York State Department of Veteran Services. And we also want to get reestablished with NACVSO, National Association of County Veteran Service Officers. Their education, their training has over the years been second to none, really. Along with the conferences that they hold for annual accreditations, they have a large amount of veteran representatives from separate organizations to help support veterans. So attending the conference is extremely advantageous. Did request a small decrease in the education training staff development, because between that and the travel line, my intent is to have 2 of the VSOs in my office attend the NAC VSO accreditation so we can get reaccredited. The third VSO is staying to maintain the office for the week around. So that should be getting through. And the only other increase that I requested is an increase in our mileage expensive off-road expenses. As our transportation continues to see larger amount of usage, traffic, consumption continue to increase. That's essentially it.
Question for, yeah,
So it seems the regular earnings are way up, but we took away regular earnings part-time. Is it a change in staffing that we have a part-time?
No,
person?
let's do the whole book, all the part-times open. Once, regular,
Everywhere,
everywhere.
just because you had to throw us a curve this year, because you didn't have enough.
There always has to be change.
I'm sorry.
We have to figure out what we'll do next year to do that.
But that
That's all
impacts,
for this year.
that impacts other bennies that weren't associated with part-time, but now are associated with full-time.
Right, harder to do a blanket, so that's true.
Yeah, excuse the numbers, because now the health insurance is doubled because you moved it up to that line.
No. Doesn't skew it that way, but you can't just take an actual percentage of the regular earnings and use it for what the part-time.
Can we spread it out, we spread it based on enrollment, not based on salary.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Could have no impact on your.
Any other questions for Ken? Thank you. Thanks.
one question I have you seen any change in the mileage to the outfit? Okay, the point is they're all over the place.
As far as the increase, yeah, so a lot of the appointments, whether they're compensation. Again, you got a water.
It's right. You've been sick, so I'm like, oh, it's not.
You don't mind it.
Lot of. Because they're full. There's a lot more that's in there. So that we're, in our vicinity. There's a lot of the availability of transportation.
Would that challenge?
A lot more veterans continue to, get the eliminated. Understand more about the transportation and what we can offer and, they're taking advantage of.
That's what I think that means.
Is.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up. Ready to remain in? Where do I have? Yes. Good. Nice. All right, start with revenue. All right. Okay. All right, so page 17. Okay, so one notable change for revenue is that last year we received a one-time legislative add-on of 110 or 101,000. And we will not be receiving that this year. And we had a contract with Warren County for $10,000, which will not be continuing. Now, should I go, let's say the line number? For the expenditure or for the revenue, just go, I can keep going to the revenue. All right, so the other noticeable difference would be that we received a little bit less money for STSJP and Safe Harbor funding under the 2801 line. So that was a little bit of a difference there. We anticipate for Safe Harbor that we'll receive half of what we got last year because it's nearing the end. We've received Safe Harbor funding for 7 years, I believe. So we reduced that by 15,000. And that the 3389 was where the one-time allocation of 101,000 from the state. However, we did just receive notice for our runaway and homeless youth dollars, and they have dramatically increased. So we just reconfigured the numbers. So for line 3820, it will actually be 284,121 that line. It increased by 53,922. And then we would also receive part of that is a $10,344 youth sports award that we didn't know that we were getting. It's a one-time fee for the total of 284,121. And then we didn't really quickly did the state aid total line, which would be 560,765. And then on the 7, yeah, sorry.
They're all sleeping.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. It would seem to me that with the level of immigrants that have come into the state now, that this Safe Harbor impetus would be a hell of a lot more critical now even than it was back when it started, which was 4 or 5 years ago. Incredible performance.
Yeah.
The state even about increasing that or supplementing it or even going beyond the, 5 years is kind of like arbitrary increases everything of our house. Anyway, it's a good thing to do, but it was inadequate for our house. I think it's going to be incredibly inadequate.
We keep on having a number of people coming into Air City. That area, we're going to be getting traffic on everybody for that kind of thing.
Right, I agree. And Sean sits on our Safe Harbor, he's our liaison for Safe Harbor. And what I think they're doing, since the runaway homeless youth dollars dramatically increased or increased.
So just up
Quite-
on it.
I think so. I think they're rolling over some of the Safe Harbor dollars perhaps into the runaway and homeless youth dollars.
It's really kind of a different approach and, you
It
know,
for sure is.
programmatic approach to it, which I don't think is necessarily the
Yeah,
right thing to do.
right. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I would agree with
So the answer is no, the state. has-
No, they have not. They have for the last probably 3 or 4 years said that we would be drastically reduced and they do keep giving us some dollars to keep Safe Harbor going. But this year we do anticipate that they'll, cut us in half of those dollars.
It seems like they want to highlight, the created their own.
Well,
I think they could the two,
Yeah,
it's
but I
either
think
because
you're
of
right.
runaway, because the ownership on the child, but the safe harbor is. Child's victims.
yeah,
Right.
That's right.
And so the difference is,
There's two issues there,
right,
and I think they're separate and distinct. I don't think they're the same issue at all.
I would agree.
So. All right.
Should I move on to the next? That's okay. That's okay.
I got a
Slows me
question
down
on
just a bit. Yeah.
Revenue,
Yeah.
just so I'm reading it right.
Yep.
Under the 2023 amended budget line. You've got 908, 129 on the totals. I'm down here on the bottom on the totals for you.
908.29, okay, yeah.
And you've taken in so far 472, 345, that you've got, the rest is still coming, correct?
Yes, I believe,
Is-
yes.
So when you go to next year. This 888, 575, there's about 50,000 you said gonna be added to that. You just read it offline,
Yes,
3820.
yes.
So really, your revenues have increased from last year. That's what I'm trying to paint a picture on.
Yes.
Okay,
We got
thank you.
this last minute notification on the, so I haven't really taken a look at the dollars, but yeah, the revenues have increased with the increase of youth sports dollars, the youth teams dollars, and the runaway homeless youth dollars. Have
Thank
all increased this year.
You're gonna leave before that date.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Just for that, the youth total where the 888,000 is, that new number would actually be 952,841, so you know.
Yeah, I figured it increased close to that.
Yep.
Thank you. I like it when it increases on the revenue second.
Yeah,
So the additional 50,000 will you?
Yep.
Is that going to offset salaries? Are you gonna have a corresponding expense increase as well?
We will have a corresponding expense increase. Also on the 40/40 line.
So. I'll let you have a moment, Brian, sorry.
No, not exactly.
she for me early. No, I already know.
I didn't want to break your.
Yeah.
Thank you for regressing back to your black cloud normal work.
I want to let you know.
Exactly.
Oh, there's a
We
race
can't
on trying that.
We're my mouth now.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, well, yeah.
So expense, okay, that's fair. So we anticipate just a noticeable under the 7310, the buyout incentives. I think we will have 2 people, 1 definite and 1 possible retirement for this year. So that was increase. And then I just wanted to note that the overtime, our overtime line is actually reimbursed through a grant in rural communities, a practice grant. So that line is reimbursed. Let's see. I don't know if I need to go through like employee benefits or any of that piece or what we.
They're all bad.
Okay. All right, as far as our expenses, we did increase by $200 just because of the cost of ink for our office supplies. And we increased 129 for Justice Clearinghouse training. That was about it for our line item increases. So on the 40 line, we need to increase the line that says OCFS youth programs for expenses. That increases by 51,718 for a total of 250,706 for that line. And that brings our total budget request to 302,492 for that line, and that's where the pass-through dollars go from that additional revenue. But we are keeping the maximum percent of that. So. Other than that, we've pretty much kept everything the same as last year. The one change are 4290 that is now entitled program expenses. For last year's budget, it was under the miscellaneous category under 4444. And then with Al speaking, we moved it into a category called program expenses. No. Yes, yes. There are times that we can add it to a grant if at all possible, and we do get reimbursed for raising age under the STSJP plan. So it is under the STSJP plan, but there still is a cost. Yeah.
We're just paying for it.
Yeah, and I can tell you what specifically that dollar, we budgeted 22,000 for that dollar line.
Yeah, I got that.
Just pointing out. Well, if we start doing that, we're not gonna get the meeting over.
I can say on the flip side, if we didn't have the option of electronic monitoring for some of the folks that, especially those that have medical needs. On the flip side, the jail would, most likely, they would be incarcerated.
I did not say it was a bad thing.
It was that flip side.
I didn't say it was necessarily a bad thing. It's a direct cost of a lot of that.
But it's less of a direct cost.
Right, especially those that have.
You know, cost of
We're doing a lot of that too.
And actually, electronic monitoring is sometimes used on really young youth. And we can't find life for them, so that could be a real problem.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be a growing problem, for sure. Within your families.
Brian, you didn't have them, when they buy the mowers here, they're not gonna be electric mowers, they're gonna be gas mowers. Okay. I'm done with it.
I can say we have not
They're
tried.
not zero turn. Dan.
Yeah, but wait for that.
Yeah, any other questions? Any other questions for Sue?
I think it's a big.
Not a question, but not a question, I wanted to thank Sue.
Batteries on the last
For coming up and meeting us.
Yeah, that was
Exactly.
excellent.
Exactly, 3 years ago. Sometimes understanding.
The batteries on the last 30, 40, 50.
Is,
Oh, sorry.
It was,
I have two, I need to show you.
I can say it was extremely helpful for us at our, since we're, the three of us are really all working at the same time. We did the 2 retirements.
It's appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, for those slots. David, don't make me out.
Yeah, because they have some when I go out. Are you carrier?
Good ask. I didn't consider that a yell. Yeah.
People love being.
Yeah.
I looked at like, well, I couldn't move my lawn. So I'm sure.
Did you get the, I got the 80, that lasts longer. You got 100, the standards of the 40s old, and that'll last. Okay, next one up.
You see the video? It's like,
That's not even funny.
Oh, the same.
They let them know.
Here.
Yeah, I know.
You put two,
Right, that's what I thought.
cut your, and you make that back.
That's fine.
Well, it's still there, it's not paying the budget, so I
Yeah.
present it.
Crazy.
Right.
The public safety.
Over down.
It's not a separate budget, it's their.
Oh, word. Caleb.
I saw that.
If the better option, you know,
Okay.
trimmer.
Yeah.
You know,
I
blower.
Thank you.
One of the, one of the. Wow.
Okay.
It's gone up a long time today. Done by now.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Put it up there, and we'll go there and do it. We're gonna do some agenda items for you. Okay, so.
For our diagnostic and treatment center, we have the ability to bill Medicare for certain organizations. So throughout COVID, we were not doing that because we weren't those vaccines for free. We weren't billing those vaccines. So because we went several years without billing Medicare, they have shut off our ability to bill our enrollment. So now that there's a new vaccine coming out, a new COVID vaccine, where we will have the ability to bill Medicare for, we want to be able to service that population, as well as we can also bill flu and pneumonia to Medicare. So we'd like to ask to re-enroll in Medicare in order to be able to bill. And there's a fee with that, which is $688 that we would have to pay to start that application process.
So
Second, any questions? All in favor? Give me your Brian. Kelly moved it. Yeah. Dave moved it. Who seconded it? As Brian moved it. And then May seconded it. Right?
Yep.
Yes.
I have one more agenda item that was, came up after we submitted our agenda items. We were approached by SUNY Plattsburgh, who we do have an agreement with, to host interns. There is an intern from Washington County, that would like to come and work with us, starting October 23rd through December 8th. There are requirements, and this is for her RN to BSN. So I just was looking, I don't know if I need approval for that or just to make you aware.
Yeah, okay, with that.
Yes.
hold it.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, so now we're gonna go into the budget. It's on page 12. The revenue. And the expenditures that affects the and.
I have starting on page 6.
Okay, next.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, that's our preschool. So 2960 is at the bottom of the page around line 162102. That is for our preschool Medicaid services. And we're requesting, or we're anticipating 713,000 approximately. That is an increase from the 2023 adopted budget. We have seen a significant increase in the number of children, which you'll see will be reflected in our expenses as well. The revenue goes up, but the expenses go up as well. On the next page, continuing with that revenue account, the other big revenue account there is the 3446. We can get 59.5% back of our expenses from the state ed department. So again, we are increasing that approximately $400,000. But again, that is because of the increase in expenses, increasing the number of children being served. That's all we have on that page. And then we flip to page 12, where we start with the revenue for public health. The first set of lines there are the lines that we actually bill for. So it's the 161005 and actually the 16
you have 1005 and 168902. The first one is for our home care, which we have not been making as many visits as we normally would. We have not been getting those referrals, and when we do get the referrals, it seems like people are not accepting those visits. So we did reduce that to $3,000, and then the immunization income decreased as well. So those two have decreased. We also decreased the other public health income amount based on previous year's receipts, and that does include all of like the rabies donations and things like that that we receive from our clinics.
If you actually get more referrals and it's not budgeted, that will just get.
Oh, yeah. Yep. The next big line there is the 3401, which is our state aid. That's our Article 6 money. That has remained consistent. We do receive $577,500 as a base grant. And then on top of that, once we exceed that, we receive 36% back on our expenses. And we do usually maximize that usually within the third quarter. We're maximizing that grant and then going into 36%. And there's a couple lines here, the state aid, other public health, the 3489. That is our fellowship grant, which we will increase that. We have a number of grants that we increase in January. We do a carryover, so they won't show in the department request for the budget. And we'll know those numbers once January comes. So once we offset the expenditures from this year. The next there, the 4401, that's our immunization action plan grant. That remains consistent. We have not received any additional funding there. The 448901, that is one of our COVID grants. The $978,000 is what was carried over from the previous year. And right now, you'll see it looks like we haven't claimed anything, but we have claimed it's just in the 448902 account. So about 264,000, or I'm sorry, 244,000 of that 264,000 is actually related to the COVID grant under the 448901. And then the remaining of 02 is the public health preparedness grant. And again, that'll be increased at the beginning of the year. Same thing with 4510, the 405, that's our car seat grant. And again, we increased that in January. And then on the next page, we started with 4059, which is our early intervention program. And that first line there is our Medicaid billing that we do for service coordination. We have service coordinators within the office, and we can bill their time to Medicaid. And this line, we are anticipating the $20,000 of the revenue. It just hasn't been posted to the account at this point. And then 4059-3449, that is our 50% back that we get from the Department of Health for our early intervention services. And that is after all the other revenue streams have been exhausted. And it's usually the 50% of what we pay out of escrow for that account. The 4451 account is our early intervention administrative grant. And again, we add that in once we know the amount in 2024. And then we go into WIC. In the 2023 budget, it was $592,000. There was a decrease to that grant of $585,000. What the state bases that on the eligible population that would have been eligible for WIC. So that went down. So the grant went down to about 1%, about 1% for this year. And again, that's a federal grant year, so it never really matches our budget. And then the 4189, that is another one of our COVID grants. This was our COVID school grant where the schools could purchase things and we reimburse them for that. that grant has ended, as of June 30th, 2023. So there'll be no additional money going into that line item, for 2024.
And then one question on the eligible population,
Mhm.
is that due to the census, decline in census?
It's very possible, yeah. Mhm.
It's important to go out.
We have next. Page 49, start going into our expenses.
This is a revenue question out, you're going to expenses, right?
Right.
I was wondering whether you would have to be Al that could answer this. I see the actual amounts, the revenue coming in lagging considerably to your expenses. When does it finally catch up to 2023? When will that, when will we get all our revenues for 2023?
April.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so there's a 4 month lag that we're floating this.
You're up, we're almost always a quarter behind.
A quarter,
Getting
okay.
At least, yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
And some of the, not to drive the answer out, I apologize, but some of like the early intervention and stuff. We're actually into the next, my books are closed sometimes by the time we get some of the information that we need to get those claims in, so you're kind of a rolling, we do the best we can to get it where it belongs, but some of it's out of our control.
Oh, I figured that it was out of your control. I'm just curious how long.
Yeah.
But we see that with some of Rob's OMH stuff is years behind, not 48.
Yeah. And some of it depends on too, the state budget.
Yes.
So if we're expecting money in that first quarter, the state can wait and pay us till their next fiscal year. So they'll pay us out of their next budget, versus the one that we're in now. So, there's always a delay there, especially with the early intervention program, because we don't pay that. Well, the escrow is the last revenue, that we would get there, and once that's paid out, then we get the 50% back. So there's a significant delay there as well.
And I feel very spoiled because both Tina and Fran are very aggressive. They do a lot of the footwork for us to get that stuff on as soon as they can.
Thank you.
Sure. So moving on to page 49, we start there at about the middle of the page, the 2960 account, which is our largest account for public health. This is the preschool account for the children ages 3 to 5. So the personnel there, the increase there is really just due to the longevity and step increases, and then the increase that was included in the new rates for 2024. So that's really the increase there. One thing I did want to point out there that because it looks a little strange is the 2960.123, the time and a half line. The 122,500 or 856 in expenses. That was part of a COVID grant. That money reflected overtime that people were working out of this budget on COVID. So that's why that's there. And again, that was just the amended budget amount that was not that's that amount. Going down to the contractual, the expenses. Just want to talk about the next page on page 50. I'm just hit some highlights here. One of the big ones here is the 40 account. This is the evaluations that are done for the children in preschool. So that line we keep the same, consistent, based on where we've been in previous years and where we are now. And then the big one that I want to point out here is the 4520. 0.99, the tuition expenses. This is for children that actually go to center-based services and also children that receive related services in the home. That is a significant increase. As I mentioned previously, the revenue increased, but there's always the flip side of that where the expenses increase as well. We have seen, like I said, a significant increase in the number of children, and that just keeps going up from one last school year to this school year that just ended. We saw a 16% increase in the number of children that were part of that program. And under the 4580, under transportation, that again follows suit there. We have to transport those children, and we're responsible for that. So we have seen an increase there. And we've also seen an increase in the need on the buses, to have an aide on the bus, which is quite costly, to have that aide on the bus. So that is the reason for the increase, in that program, the tuition and the transportation.
Any questions, Matt?
Well, if you've seen the increase already and the 2023 actual amount, 2/3 of the way through the year, the 1.2 million. That 2 million for 2023, but it's gonna be probably pretty close.
Yep, that was the other thing I was gonna bring up.
When you bring up it, but then we're increasing it by 28% for next year. That seems like a heck of an increase.
So for this year, I have spoken with Melissa and the budget officer about our anticipated shortage for the 4520 line item, and actually the account overall. We are anticipating that line to be over about $434,000. That 1.2 million that's there, that is only reflective of expenses through
So that's through June, so
Through
actually
June.
January through July, we're at 1.3.
Okay, most of the rest of the
So we're
budget's
only-
through September 1st, so you're a
Yeah,
couple
we're
months before that.
Yes.
Understood.
Yeah.
Got the math, thank you.
Yeah, we'll have to move 176,000, we figured, for contingency, to take care of that one.
Okay.
So of that 434,000 that we're anticipating being short, we do get back the 59.5% of revenue, so we can offset some of that with the revenue amount, just not 100%.
So if we increase our expense by $580,000, potentially, we're gonna get 60% of that back.
Yes, we
Is
should
that,
get,
and that's reflected in the revenue on a previous page?
it is.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
July was about 182,000.
It dipped a little bit for the summer, so they don't have as many kiddos for
Right, so that,
January, yeah, July and August, and it'll go back up
Got
a little later.
So,
You're looking for good news, Jared.
I know. Well, Al's gonna bring the rainstorm soon, so I'm just trying to get ahead of that.
so then we go to page 68, the expenses and total count. The increases there for personnel, again, it's the 2% increase, plus the steps and longevity. For the people in that payroll. And then we go to the next page, page 69. The 404. For the equipment account, we will be adding some money there, again, with our grants, in the 2024 budget, for those equipment needs that are covered under the budget, or under the grant. And then going down to the 24s, you'll see a decrease there in our phone account. Again, that's because IT has taken over, that service for us. So we're not budgeting that. Office supplies, a significant decrease, based on usage. The dues and subscriptions, there is an increase there. We are part of the New York State Association of County Health Officials, and there was an increase there, in their dues. But we do receive a lot of great information from them, and they're very supportive, for the local health departments. The 4080 account, the 87,000, that represents our district money that we've been carrying over. So we will request to carry that over again into the 2024 budget. Insurance increased, we get that information directly from county admin. So that's what they were anticipating for us for 2024. A decrease in the maintenance contract. Last year we had budgeted a time and effort system where we could keep track of our time electronically. That system was not going to work out for us based on conversations that we had with IT. So we have found another solution that we're working on that we're going to hopefully get covered under one of our grants. So, we'll be bringing that forward once we have more information on that. So that's why there's a decrease there in that line. Let's see. The decrease in advertising, again, most of our advertising for personnel is done through personnel. So we haven't really spent anything in that line in the last several years. And then again, one of the grants we're getting is purposely for recruitment and retention. So if we did need to advertise, above and beyond what personnel does, then we could include that under our grant. Mylar, the maintenance in lieu of rent, that is significant, but we are anticipating a move. So again, that account, we decreased it just a little bit there. The miscellaneous account, that's our shredding, and our burns that we do for our medical information that we have. We have many boxes over there. We got pretty far behind during COVID, in getting rid of those documents. So we have increased that for 2024 to try to get that stuff cleaned out and taken care of before our move.
You know, one of our cleanup items that we've been working for 5 years on now is kind of eliminating those miscellaneous accounts.
Okay,
I would encourage you, the budget officer, consider maybe a contracted services line
okay,
rather than a miscellaneous.
okay.
And,
Yeah,
if
we
that
definitely move
does
it there.
work, that'd be great.
Yeah. The tuition account, for our NISA contract, we provide tuition reimbursement, for our nurses that want to go back and possibly get their BSN. So that's what that account is for, it's through their contract. And then the grants account, again, that's money that'll be carried over, into the 2024 budget. Then we have our family health line, stayed consistent there. The grants line, that first line, that's our lead grant, our lead poisoning prevention grant. And then the Article 6 one there, it looks like it's decreased, but once we know the car seat grant amount, we carry that over into January. That'll increase about 15,000 for January. And the lease control. Really nothing significant there. The money that was there, the 7,468 for 2023, that was COVID money that we had there under equipment that wasn't spent. The 406 account under the lease control. Again, the 4625.53, that was COVID money, that'll be carried over into 2024. One of our COVID grants that was supposed to end 12/31, the state is considering extending that because there is so much unspent funds, but they really limit what we can spend the money on. So it's great that they want to carry it over, but it seems like they would have to relax some of those requirements because we really don't have a whole lot of COVID expenditures at this point. And Article 6, that is our state aid programs that are in there, 100% funded until we get that there 36%. So that remains pretty much consistent. And then that bottom line there, the TB expenditure, we are, if there is somebody that has active TB, tuberculosis within a county, we are responsible for paying for that person's meds, and that can get quite costly. And if they need chest x-rays and things like that, it does add up quickly. So we do budget that there, in the instance that we would have somebody. And then under 407, the community health, that's money that's set aside for our community health assessment. We do have an agreement with the Adirondack Health Institute that we contract and they gather a lot of the data for us and interpret that data for us. So we do have a contract with them for the $5,000. We removed the 2,200 because that was for way back when we used to print the community health assessment and have, you know, really fancy printed copies. Now we just have that on our website, so we have removed that for 2024. Health education stayed the same. 4059 is the early intervention account. A lot of these accounts in early intervention will change once we carry over the early intervention administrative grant. such things as the telephone and the postage. That telephone account is just for cell phones at this point. The bigger accounts in this are the 40-59-40-40, which is the early intervention evaluations. And that's going to remain consistent based on where we are now in the year, the number of children we have. And the other big one there is the 45-20, which is the tuition expenses. And again, we are anticipating that to remain the same. We do anticipate a slight increase in the transportation amount. It does seem like more children are being transported to programs, or their parents are transporting, and we're responsible for reimbursing the mileage for this program. And then the next account is 4082. That's our WIC program. Again, there was a slight decrease there in their grant amount. The expenditures are not going to exactly match the grant because, like I said, it's a different fiscal year that we have. The increase in the 0.1s is again just a percentage increase in steps and longevity, and then the 2%. Those pretty much remain the same. It's 100% grant funded. For that account, I don't know if you have questions there. And then the 4189 is that was our COVID account. So really nothing added here for 2024 under the 0.1s. Under the 0.2s and 0.4s, we may see an increase there. Like I said, if they do decide to carry over that ELC COVID grant, we would see an increase there, because we would carry that over in anticipation of spending it next year. I think that's all I have. Any questions on the revenue or expenses? Yeah.
Back on page 70 for your deviation control. Article 6 expense.
Mhm.
For 2 years, you were in the 30,000 range. You were 26,000 this year.
Mhm.
You dropped the budget down a little bit. You think you're gonna need the 108 is more than we spent in the past, in the receivable past.
Right.
Are you seeing a trend that you're trying to prepare for, or just belts and suspenders? Which I
Just
don't
my belts and
appreciate.
suspenders as usual.
That's a lot of like a piece.
Yeah, this our rabies, which this past year we did see a significant increase in our rabies investigations. It also includes anything above and beyond that we do for the immunization program that's not covered by the grant is also included there. We have other state aid things that we have to provide, such as family planning, things like that. So, but it really is kind of anticipation of if there is something that's happening, and we would have that money in there to cover it for state aid.
And if you drop that, you drop, is there corresponding revenue?
Yes.
That's gonna be attached to that, so
Right.
dropping it doesn't really benefit us.
We'd have to drop some of the state aid revenue as well. Yeah.
That's right, man.
That part. The other part.
Okay, and just have several personnel requests. We want to do that now. Or do we- Yes. Okay. So the first, I want to start out by we would like to change some of the supervisor positions within our office to 37.5 hours versus 35. Those positions would be our office manager, our physical officer, our early intervention program coordinator. Each of these positions has taken on additional responsibility and would require more hours per week to do what they need to do to get their tasks done. And then along with that is the supervision that goes with that. So we would like to request to increase those positions to 37.5 per week. The other, one of the other positions we have right now, we have 4, they're called preschool coordinators, but they're really early intervention coordinators. We would like to increase it created a position called a senior preschool coordinator, at a grade 16. And that would replace one of the service coordinators. So we wouldn't, it's not really adding a position, it's really changing the title and upgrading. So with that, the person that's in this position has really taken on additional responsibilities relating to the EI program. She has longevity with the agency, and she really has stepped up in training and orienting the newer staff that's been coming on. She also attends all the meetings and acts as the child and family representative on the committee at preschool education. She's also responsible for the transportation and arranging and coordinating all of that with our transportation company and the parents. So we would like to request that. The other, and in doing that, our early intervention program coordinator, she is her supervisor, the preschool coordinator. So we would like to increase her to a grade 18. Right now, she's a grade 16. And this position is overseeing both of those programs that we just went over. Pretty much all of the children with special needs programs, preschool program, and the early intervention program. Her responsibilities have increased significantly with the new regulations that are coming out and trying to keep track, and with the numbers increasing as well within those programs. And the last one I have is to, we have a clerk position within our budget that's filled right now. We'd like to increase that to a senior clerk. We used to have a senior clerk in our budget. Well, this clerk has, she's been here now with the agency for a couple of years. She has taken on those duties that the senior clerk was doing. And, you know, she was trained and has got up and is now doing those duties that the senior clerk was doing. So we'd like to be able to increase that. And again, we wouldn't backfill the clerk position. So that there. So in saying all this, I know it sounds like a lot. Did I get all of them, Fran? Okay. I know this sounds like a lot, but we're willing, we have a clerk position within our budget that we have not filled. So we'd like to remove that from our budget to be able to do these changes within our budget. And it does create a cost savings of about $17,000 by removing that clerk position and adding in these changes within our budget. The other thing is most of our positions are these upgrades and these changes, they are 75% funded, either through a grant or through state aid. So just the other thing, the 37.5 hours is a recruitment issue for us as well. We have had both internal in the county and external. We have had very qualified candidates that have turned down positions, either transferring into our department or coming from the outside because it is a 35-hour, because those supervisory positions are a 35-hour versus 37.5. So they are taking pay cuts to come into our department. So just wanted to put that out there as well.
Even can I just clarify, your request to go to 37.5 hours, the 40, that's because the union employees are 37.5 hours.
Correct. Yep, our nurses are 37.5. And two of our other supervisor positions are clinical supervising nurse and our public health preparedness coordinator and disease control nurse. Those are supervisory positions, and those are 37.5 as well. And then I just did want to talk about the fellowship program. This is a program that we've had for the past several years. It's been successful within the agency. That program is going to be ending June 30th of 2023. We currently have one fellow and one graduate fellow who we would like to retain after June 30th. We are receiving another grant that I know we've spoke about before. It's the public health infrastructure grant. So the point of that grant is to recruit and retain staff and also build the infrastructure of public health. So we would like to request for that grant, under that grant, 2 public health specialists at a grade 16. And I've gone over all these changes with Danielle, but that one in particular, we came up with the grade 16. And again, these positions will be 100% grant funded. That grant is a 5-year grant, so it goes to 11/30/2027. For some reason, the state started it at 12/1/22, but we still don't have our executed contract for that, so we are waiting on that, but we anticipate it any day, is what they're telling us. We are gonna use a significant amount of those funds as well for our move, over to Burgoyne, to shape our furniture and things like that. So but we would like to keep those 2 people on, under the public health specialist positions. And again, it would really just be transitioning from the fellowship program to the public health infrastructure grant. So. Any questions?
What year are we looking at the moment?
Hopefully the next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Some good news. And some other news.
Hey. Jamie? You want to come over and say that? Well, that's entirely up to you. But our, because they're intermingled. There's a
You
didn't want to go there?
Yeah.
So, you guys gonna be a tag team? What we usually try to do is go in order of our accounts, and so we would start with page 14, revenue. And that starts with DSS 6010. And then there will be a time that it then bounces to overhead, and then it bounces back chronological. Okay, thank you. It's your plan. It's been well tuned. So starting with page 14, and the 6010 DSS admin starts out with revenue. I always struggle to get my mind into revenue before appropriations, but that being the case, that's how it is here. I'd like to just point out some things that are bigger differences and things that have also been revised since we submitted our request, and the budget officer could also speak to this. The 6010-1809 line repayments of family assistance, an adjustment has been made to that to bring that number to 400,000. Reducing the difference from the 2023 budget. We, that we try to be somewhat conservative, not to cut us off, but to be able to make sure that we hold realistically within the budget. Again, if you have questions as you go through these lines, please let me know. I'm really focusing on the differences. There is another difference in the 6010-240103 line, and that is a change due to how interest is being accrued on this is child support funds. Is that right, Becky? Child support funds. Then the state aid at the bottom of that page, medical assistance 6010-3601. That's a change with journal vouchering. It's also what I understand. Moving to the next page. We have the 6010-3610 state aid for social services admin. That is an area where we are looking at trend and trying to be cautious. These are always big ticket items. The safety, state aid for safety net, the change there is due to the breaking out of Code Blue. We did, as you know, receive more funding for the 2023 year. And then we are also for the 2024 year, we're breaking that out with a new line that appears at the bottom, 6140-3689, where we moved that 928,000 into the Code Blue line there. Our safety net expenses are up. And very clear about that. A couple of things that I would like to say, though, that to bring back around, you talked previously about the homeless and the excessive expenses with that. Several months back, I spoke with the committee about adding in contracts for transitional beds at shelters. There was the Open Door Mission in Glens Falls, and there's shelters in Saratoga. So we now have 5 beds contracted, reserved for us, that we continue to make sure that people are in. This is something that's helping them achieve independence more rapidly, getting them out of the housing. It is also a bit of a deterrent to people. We have people that we offer these programs to because we think they're appropriate, and they say no. Then we say, hey, you're not homeless. So there, there are other things that serves a purpose for us. I don't see this as being, these contracts as being an increase in our expense. I see them as being a way to try to neutralize and turn the corner on what we're dealing with the high numbers of homeless people. Also, just a thing that I have not mentioned, and I'm not sure whether or not Shelley has, but between Shelley and I, we were talking about doing something different with this group of people that we have that are homeless. Temporary assistance requirements do address working and work readiness, but they are, when you add in the level of being homeless, it's a whole nother set of barriers. And we started from the perspective of doing a job fair with employers that we would be very transparent with about the fact that these people are coming to you with barriers, but we'd like to bring you a pot of people because you all have, open positions. Let's see what we can do with that. So there is going to be, it's called a second chance job fair that we're going to have here in the building in October. And we already have employers committed to that. And we have a few more that we're working with to be able to increase that. We're also going to have proper extension on hand. Our daycare program, we provide assistance for people with gas cards to be able to get them to and from employment, and also have the Southern Adirondack Child Care folks there, and we just providing 4 laptops so that clients can be able to complete applications on the seat. So while I continue to tell you these numbers are going up and we're trying, I want you to be aware of things that we really are putting in place to try to address it. Also, for Blue, I have said to you that there have not been recommendations or we can restrict people that access Code Blue if they misbehave in a sheltering setting. We are still obligated to provide housing for them, so we are moving them to motels. One of the things that I have talked with the shelter about is what other things can we put into place to try to mediate the behaviors, and really, while the state doesn't have the compliance factors, have us have a level of compliance that is expected there. And one of the things I just heard about this week from other commissioners in my Eastern regional meeting was that what they are doing with people is providing a separate area. They're no longer providing a cot or a bed for these folks, but when they're not compliant, they can still be in a warm setting and they are given a chair. So that is something else I want to be able to work with the shelter on, to see if there's a way for us to do that. I think that would be another deterrent to some degree, but also a way of maintaining more order and having people, keeping them from having to go to motels, but also keeping them safer in each other situation. So just some things I wanted to get a touch base on what we're talking about. I was talking about the revenue, but it, of course, is about the cost too.
And I see this, the state aid for daycare is more than double that. How are those dollars spent? Do they go to daycare, go out of families, or?
They are provided, there's timesheets that are kept between our office and the daycare providers, and then the funds are sent through to the daycare providers. It is about eligibility for the families. However, it has, eligibility criteria has greatly expanded. Higher level income people are now eligible for it. I believe it's 300% of the poverty line at this time. We are required to pay for more absences, which had not been something that would have been provided in the past. which then made daycares not want to take the children that were receiving our funds. So it is a way to try to, ensure that there are daycare slots available. But they're also having us, when we do open a case, the state is requiring us to have a 12-month guarantee for those funds to be able to be provided to them. So more money is coming, but it is also a matter of how they're changing the fiscal years. Is that right, Becky? We have a few different of our programs that are funded federally, and change has been happening with the state to try to bridge that gap for us.
That is triple FS.
Right, right.
Childcare fund grant.
Yeah, so the funds that we're, it's 100% in there, the funding that comes in to what we then are willing to spend. However, I am concerned because of this dramatic expansion, that at some point I may be sharing with committee that we are now having to look at waivers. It is completely the opposite of the direction that we want to go in. We're trying to increase the number of daycares that are available, but at the same time, I don't want to hold the fact that it's federal funding that's being provided.
Is that reasonable household income? What's that number that equals?
I don't have a chart on that with me at this point, but I can give you that number. That's about the household. Poverty level is pretty, is excruciatingly involved. It is high, yes, higher than what we've ever looked at, but it's still not. I might guess somewhere around 40 or 50,000 per household. Yeah, the difficulty with charging is you don't have them. Yes. It's just like normal calculation. Because otherwise you know, other than what kids are covered the benefit from daycare.
That number, were you saying that's 300% threshold?
Yes, I believe, yeah, I'm totally off the top of my head, yes, here, but I think the total household income for a family of 4, at that 300% is probably somewhere in there. It could be, I could be way off, but I'm just guessing.
Federal poverty level within 2023.
Federal poverty level for a family of 4 is 30. It would be.
So household 90,000.
To be able to receive childcare assistance.
That's right on sliding scale.
It's childcare assistance. Yes,
And
I
that's-
understand.
That'd be sliding scale. Is you number, less.
Yeah, yes, they're given less priority as well.
Yeah.
Grandparents.
Huh?
It's called grandparents.
Yeah. I, you know, I grew up on a dairy farm. I know that seems like a very high number. I get it. But this is about people.
Oh, no, I wasn't, no, you took that the wrong way.
Oh, you want, oh.
You took that the wrong way. I always have a Catholic kid fine.
Any other questions on DSS revenues? There were other revisions, the federal aid, the 6010 4609, federal aid for family assistance, and child care, that is what we were just talking about. That number was revised to be 1,550,000. The one directly below it, or the services admin, that also was revised in collaboration with the budget officer, just 3,800,000. So then chronologically, we would be at page 16 with OFA revenues.
Starting with 6772. For OFA revenues. First line 6772 1972 is the OFA contribution and cost shares. And this year we did put down a projection of 13,000 less than previous. However, we really don't anticipate an actual decrease in the program income you received. This change that we noted here is really just less of a variance between the projected and the actual amount received.
bringing your attention to 6772, 3772, state aid for aging programs. We're projecting an estimated overall increase in state revenue of approximately $97,410. And this is an accumulation of various state funding sources. With the federal aid, line 4772, we're projecting to decrease, and the primary reason to this is due to the end of federal COVID funding. Any questions about the holiday revenue? Over to page 74. So this at page 74, I think. 74 is the DSS admin appropriations accounts start there. 6010.121 regular earnings. Projections would be on par with the steps for employees. In this line also this year, the part-time caseworkers that we had budgeted for. I think last year we budgeted much higher for them than we have this year, just based on what we really have been able to utilize them for. We haven't had as many, we had 4 positions approved part-time, bringing caseworkers back that had resigned from us, but we're still wanting to work for us. We've never had all 4 of them filled, and at least one of them has another full-time job, another one is a full-time student, so their hours are irregular, I guess at best, so we brought that into a more reasonable amount there, as well as with our foster trainers that we have for foster care. Those are retirees from our office, and we can only train when we can recruit, and be keeping the ground out there trying to recruit, but we have not had as many trainings as I would like to. They haven't been demanded. The overtime 1.5, 6010.123, that's again due to the increases in rate, the turnover amount that we've seen has required the people that are working to do more overtime. I have seen that start to slow. I'm hoping that that is something that is realized within the coming year as well. So overtime of the members. The on-call pay, the 6010.128. I just want to mention here that we have added in that extra on-call, that level of on-call that is for heat and homeless. And that was something that we agreed when it was approved that I would refer to again at this time of year. So there is an increase there over 2022. That was in part because of that addition. That money is not, as you'll see from 2023, the actual amount is considerably less, but that is at the request of the caseworkers, whether or not they get paid for standby time or whether they take comp time from us and the examiners as well. So that number, what we have there is threshold. What we see is more of a request for comp time. We do have a limit on how much comp time is on here, however. The other lines on that page, not something that we budget for. I don't know if that's anything treasurer just to speak to. And then page 75, the computer equipment. That is something that all of that has been discussed with Terry. It's just a continuation of gradual replacement of the units that we have within our department. So if there's any questions on that.
What percentage of that is reimbursed on the equipment side? Isn't it that a large number?
75% is, yeah, I tried to do a deep dive once, I think actually it was related to the staffing requests that I'm making for this year. I wanted to really dig in instead of just saying, oh, it's about 75. I wanted to wrap my hands around it. And there are just so many factors for any number of our programs that to try to get into the weeds with that, it really is too confounding. But overall, everything within DSS is averages out to be 75%. When you include our accounts that are much lower with a lower reimbursement like safety net to all of the ones that have the 100% reimbursement, we really do mush out at 75.
Thank you.
Trends moving down through, getting to the 60-10-4170, the education, training and staff development line. I would just like to mention that the travel and training that's afforded through that allocation that we received from the state is also outlined in our travel and training plan that we submitted this year. There are a few specific nights where we, I have indicated on that plan that the locations for the NYPWA conferences are in the summer in Saratoga, in the winter in Albany. I have a policy form that is also set in Albany. So those are within the restrictions that are set for overnight stay by the county because of the mileage not being as far. And I have come to the committee in the past asking to be allowed to have to stay overnight and have that cost covered. I indicated that within the plan that those are the items I would like to be able to have it be understood and have it be less of a requirement to get approval before we can book and more be about the fact that I would advise you about those opportunities as they're coming up. And then also from the information that I've learned from them, I'm back to committee after that. Gina, you had.
So in the training plan, there are a couple items listed. One's through the Association on Aging and Leadership Institutes. In 2024, they're looking to not only have one, but have two leadership institutes with all being focused on legislative needs and advocacy. And that typically happens at various locations throughout New York State. Some of the locations have them within the mile radius that is noted in the community policy. The other item is the Aging Concerns Unitas conference that is been traditionally in Albany, and it is facilitated by the Association on Aging in New York Association. And with that, I also serve on the board of the association, and we facilitate it together. Also,
I'm going to bounce back up because I neglected to speak to the equipment vehicles expense, the 60-10-2070. That is a number we met and discussed, and I believe that there's probably been more work with county admin and budget officer related to DPW in the ongoing process with carpool. But what we budgeted there is for 120,000. That again would be 75% reimbursed, but for us to continue to provide new cars into the ESS fleet, which then pushes other cars out into low carpool.
Way of buying cars at reduced cost. To the pool, yes.
And there's the subcontractor line. Gina, do you want to pick up with that? As you said,
we're continuing on page 75, the subcontractor line 60-10-4400. These subcontracts listed here are really the heart of OFA. Just kind of bring it to your attention that there are some increases and decreases based on need and current trend. On page.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Where do you go on the subcontractors? Do you run the sites or do you have any oversight over their books, or do they say this is how much money we need?
So if you're speaking about the main sites.
Right.
So we've been contracted with 2 meal sites, Cambridge Valley Senior Center is one, and the Kingsbury Port Edward Senior Center is also the other. And so basically, this year you will see an increase. We did receive a request from the Kingsbury Port Edward site, and we did put that in the budget this year. I want to say that was approximately.
I guess my question was more on the Cambridge site, because the towns also give them money, but I didn't know. You know, as we're all struggling to do the budgets, do they still need money from us, or is it only partial for what you? Do you think what we give them from the county is paying for all their expenses, or do you think they still need the help of the towns?
So when we contract with the Cambridge Valley Senior Site, it's for the implementation of the nutrition program, which is the congregate meal, and also for senior center recreation and education opportunities. So they, right now we have it in the budget and did receive a request from them for an increase. So right now we're budgeting $13,200. And so when we monitor, like our oversight consists of really those areas, the nutrition program, making sure that that's run in accordance with state policy and standards, and also the senior center rec and ed piece.
Okay, yeah, I just need to know so that when I'm defending the position in my budget of giving the money, that I can say. Thank you.
We have no control over their staffing as well. So that's.
Can you explain about the unmet needs personal care?
So the unmet needs personal care, so that unmet needs funding is 100% funding that we get from the state. We use this allocation here for in-home personal care services. So it could be for PC1 level, PC2, or consumer directed services. For the facilitation of personal care, we contract with several community-based agencies. They have control over their staffing and training for their staff, following all the state regulations and such. Yeah. Now, I did want to touch on the meals piece that always is bigger in our budget. As you can see again this year, it's elevated. Reason being that the cost of food has increased, and we also are projecting based on this year's trends, higher level of meal being served in 2024. That money goes to the sheriff's department. And they facilitate that contract through the actual meal production, meal costs, their staffing, such. So 2023, we were paying them $6 per meal, and in 2024, we're projecting $6.38 per meal. For a little over 97,000, I'm sorry, 94,000 meals in 2024.
Is there like a donation type revenue that comes back to people that receive it?
Okay, so we are required by the Older Americans Act to seek out contributions. So we do keep record of the number of meals an individual receives per month, and at the end of that month, we send them out a contribution letter. We don't, however, track whether or not people pay or forbidden to do that.
Do they track the revenue in this budget?
So that would be. $6772 under the revenue. Get revenue page, 1972. So contributions and cost share, we are required for some personal care services, if they're under the ISEP or ISEP-like services, we're required to actually provide a bill, which is called cost share. They need the eligibility for that cost share. So at this time, you'll also see an OFA line, these transportation services. So you're gonna see here that there are two designated lines for leave. We contract with leave for senior transportation services, and criteria for that is that an individual is 60 or older and Washington County resident. So leave right now manages that program for us. And you'll see that there are two lines, two budget lines offered. The $80,000 is the county share for the services. And below that, you'll see the $28,430. That is through Office for Aging programs, funding sources. So at this time, we have Shelley here to join us. Let's give her the opportunity to speak. Good add to that, sorry. The $80,000 that's in there this year, that's been the same amount since 2000. Is it 13? Yeah, it's about 10 years that $80,000 the county share has not increased at all. So it's speaking, Michelle, if you don't let me have space for you, sorry. From leave, you were reviewing some of the contracts and you had noted that we're not really paying for the services that we're receiving. Yeah, there's about a $38,000 deficit and transportation services that we're offering to seniors between the 80,000 that come in from the county, between the 8,000 and the 24 from off the aging. I'm sorry, numbers don't always stick in my head. 28. It's about a $38,000 deficit that we have. That is largely due to inflation, cost of gas, that kind of thing. We do not turn away anyone. There have been some people that prioritize service. So if someone's scheduled for a shopping trip and someone else needs to get to dialysis, the person scheduled for the shopping trip is going to get off. Right now, we only have services during the daytime hours as well. I came to Melissa and Gina, and we are hoping to, we're requesting an increase in the funds that we have for transportation. The seniors in Washington County. I'm not sure what information specifically you want to make about it. There's questions for that. The amount that Gina put in the budget. That would be.
Question. No question in the past, we don't really. I know that I in our specific town, we have people that complain that when you take an elderly person somewhere, you can't carry a bag, you can't walk, or you can't really assist them. They have to do everything on their own. And you must have insurance for that, but it's not really helpful for the, for the elder person if you can't assist them at all.
Right.
So have we taken that into consideration? Because I'm with Dana's approach that I would, we should add the money, but I don't want to add money that people can't get the service, because if they could do that on their own, they'd probably drive their car and just themselves.
I think
I think that's a problem.
do a lot. They actually do quite a bit for the people that they serve. I would hear stories all the time about them carrying groceries to individuals' porch or into their home. They through grass that hasn't been mowed in a long time. They do a lot for them, and they're more than just drivers. And I think that this is something that's really important about this program, is that sometimes our drivers are the only people these folks are speaking to.
that day or that week or whatever. We've had drivers come back and say things like, for instance, when I was, very new, one of the first things I heard was that someone there that was actually sleeping on board the combat. And the driver only knew that because they took the groceries in for them. And so we were able to gather some things, some donations, that kind of thing, and get that individual situated, but, the people that we serve look forward to those times and, get to know the drivers, and it's just sort of it is a safety net of sorts, I believe, for those individuals that we're driving, because it is so much more than just the ride.
Actually, comment that Gina's meals program is equally the same, so much.
the
more.
same.
It's interaction.
Just about, in Washington County, we don't have any public transportation, or, I mean, can you imagine someone, and that's had dialysis, and that's no way to get that. So, it's an important, it's very important,
Would,
resource.
would any of the $38,000 increase have an offsetting revenue, or is there gonna be another second?
We would work out to continue the contribution method, I mean, like I spoke of, the delivered meals. So we work with Lee, and send us a roster of people served and only one waitress those individuals take during that month, and we send out a letter seeking a contribution from those riders.
You're saying federal funding would have any room to get that money.
So at this time, I did share with Melissa and Shelley that the state is currently assessing free Office for Aging's unmet needs funding, which I spoke earlier about that funding source being 100% state funding with no county match. I have had a conversation with Shelley and said, let's try to work into play, even moving forward, some kind of documentation or listing of individuals who couldn't be served, or if they're on a wait list. And so the unmet needs funding is specifically for unmet needs. Transportation is huge. It's a huge unmet need. So I'm hoping that the state continues this process every year and evaluates every department's use of the unmet needs funding, and then takes that allocation and distributes it. So I'm hoping that I'll see an increase in that. We don't specifically have to wait list, as I responded to, with that, because we do try to just serve everyone. The one that comes in, everyone that calls needs those services, but there are times that we aren't able to use something in particular. So we are going to start tracking that, but was able to get her, with a narrative from our transportation coordinator with examples of the kinds of things that she's seen in the services, the kinds of services we haven't been able to provide. What kind of things are going on next. And we also, I think one of the greatest needs that we're really seeing, and Gina and I haven't talked about this too much, but I think one of the greatest needs we see, and I think she would agree, is that is those early evening hours. There just isn't a lot of transportation. Yeah, so I know you have the go-go grandparent, right? That you're trying, and then it's, but we just looking at options to expand our hours for transportation. It's not going to be a quick and easy fix. But we definitely see the need and want to be able to do that.
How much upfront time do people need to get a ride? Like, do they have to give you a week's notice? I mean, I don't think they can call you today and have them pick them up and do them, but I mean.
We do have a schedule, and there are some people who have some regular appointments that we know about. I would have to double check because I'm not right in the program, but I do think that sometimes we need some immediate needs, especially if they're medical. Their medical needs, something, some people shift things, have to get them where they gotta go.
Thank you.
And I think part of the $38,000 that's not currently being met, right, is because you have increased maybe the number of vehicles for transportation and maybe increase the driver to be able to meet our needs.
Yes, so we have, 5 part-time drivers and a transportation coordinator. We have 5 vehicles. We're on the road all the time. Our fourth thing is our transportation coordinator. She's on the road out and about a lot. And then the senior, she's going to the senior meal sites to connect with people and talk to them about transportation. And drives herself whenever she has to. So, yeah, those vehicles and drivers are busy. They're never sitting around speaking.
Shelley and Gina, is there a Medicare charge back for transportation at all?
That's the hard part.
They can do it.
There is an interesting that you mentioned that, because I was speaking to, Medicare liaison, who works with certain Medicare plans and asking if, if this is going to be something worth funding. We see it in the Medicaid world, where Medicaid individuals can get medical transportation. And I believe League is still screening those folks, because if somebody does have Medicaid and they're looking for a medical appointment, I understand that we're shifting those individuals to the Medicaid system.
Yes.
And then opening up that to a non-Medicaid.
This time, yes, is there any revenue that we get into the budget offset after that or not? What does it say?
I think, I know, here from Becky's perspective, that I think we already did that proportion. I would agree.
For the additional 38.
I was not aware of the additional 38 until now, but the 80,000 there is no funding that's applied towards that.
Right.
So there's nothing for the 38.
You said there could be more coming, but there's nothing concrete to make us think that that would happen. So I just want to know that.
You're speaking about the unmet needs.
Yeah.
funding? Correct. I mean, we won't know
That's right.
until, the budget's really, our allocations are released
Right.
next year, so. We do have, unmet needs funding set aside for the GoGo grandparent transportation program, which we're seeing minimal use of, and right now I want to say we have about 30,000 allocated to that program. Based on the use of the program, even though it is minimal, the people that do use it rely on it. So we're always hoping that there are going to be more Uber and Lyft drivers recruited through GoGo, and to be able to see that kind of non-traditional program started. Shelley and I have also talked about looking at those non-traditional transportation options. A few years ago, there was a program called Uplift, and they used vouchers. So basically, the vouchers serve the transportation company. So you're removing like the cost of paying for personnel, time coordinating those transports and whatnot, and it also allowed individuals to get transportation services outside of a traditional business day. So I think there are definitely some options.
So in order to use that, that would be county funded money, right? And we would just have to coordinate with CAD companies or other services that would accept that.
Correct. I would like to incorporate that into my contract with League. Have them be the ones reaching out and setting up those contracts. Fine. Any other?
Yeah, with DSS appropriations, 6010-4402 starts the lineup. That's the contract, or the MOUs that we have in place with the sheriff's department, which covers the cost for the deputy in the lobby, as well as covering one of their investigator positions. And I do believe that is it. That's right, two things. But in the past, we were waiting for the sheriff to ask us for an increase, and what we have figured out to do, and I believe we just adapted to this last year, was to put in increases that we know would be a cost to the sheriff's department, new increases in pay. We are able to claim that, get that reimbursement, 75% of that money back to our reimbursement. Same with the department right below that, that would be contract or the MOU that we have in place, excuse me, with IT. We have a person from IT that is placed directly in our office that works alongside our US folks, IT staff as well. When I say MOU, the state requires us to have an MOU that has been approved by them before they are willing to give us the reimbursement back for that. Other, big changes moving down through here. One stands out in my line of sight here is the foster care, the grants foster care recruitment, ARP. But that's money that we would just be moving forward from year to year. So it's not that we aren't budgeting for it, but that pot will continue for us to draw down from. That was the ARPA money in the county received designated for the purpose of both childcare and foster care home recruitment. Note on that page, the daycare, which we already spoke about, it's also referenced on this page. Spoke about it, there's a revenue time. Following trends, moving on to the next page. Services for recipients. It's up. And that is in accordance with the trend. We need to be occurring with that. Medicaid, we're presently able to say that is another number that has been revised in consultation with the budget officer. This was a result of us receiving a letter last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, from the state clarifying what they were doing with the weekly shares. So that number has now been fine tuned to $11,459,293. So it shaves off some of what we had anticipated as a extra cost.
And with that, we had to pay a little more this year, but it was under our budget numbers.
Yes.
98,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 98,000. So at what we had budgeted last year ended up being in excess of what we were going to have to spend this year. What we budgeted last year for this year was in excess of what we were charged for this year. So if we increased those payments at the end of this year, it would offset and reduce the amount of money that we needed to pay in 2024. So, but it is still less than what we had budgeted for 2023.
Close to 200,000, we're gonna add 150,000, so we could add it next year, 2025, if they get like that. We know it's coming.
Yes. This is predictable at this point. Any other questions moving through the various appropriation categories? The inclusion of Code Blue expense and pulling that out into the contractor line is what we have also referred to previously during this meeting. And no other major changes in our expenses. On top third of page 78, and then takes you to other expenses for OFA on page 80.
So at this point, looking at 6772, 2070, we would not put any money into vehicles this year, just reflecting back the purchase of the vehicles that we had in the past were again related to the COVID dollars that we received. So we did not put a budget for that.
Extremely good. Yeah.
Thank you. The next page, 81. Dealing with expenses, just like to, the 4291 was the new line that we had added in 2023. And that is again for all the special events that we have, like our senior picnic, our fall festival that's coming up in a week or so, and certain events that we facilitate throughout the county throughout the year.
on line 4,400. There is a 3,000 put on that line. We did bring it to the budget office's attention. That 3,000 needs to shift down to the miscellaneous petty cash line for the older PC petty cash. If any questions about that. Yes, we did it. So, what I
Is it
submitted,
just? David.
what I submitted for personnel request for 2024 was the addition of a grade B supervisor. Currently, we have 4 grade B supervisors in our department. They are what oversees our casework units. So 2 of them oversee child protective units. Each of those 2 child protective units has a total of 10 staff in them. And another one oversees our placement services and preventive, which actually has a total of 16 staff in it. I would like to divide that combo unit back out to be able to specifically focus on those 2 areas of child welfare. The complexity of foster care, I think, overshadows the preventive work, and the preventive work is what really is meat and potatoes for us as far as keeping children out of foster care and keeping some of the cross systems kids that have very complex needs that we see, putting them on the services rather than allowing them to get to the point where we are working on trying to find a placement for a youth that perhaps otherwise would have been served through a different system. I find that the breadth of all of this programming is overwhelming for one previous supervisor. So I have asked for that position.
So there'll be 4 in total at that point,
There would be 5 in
5
at
in
that
total.
point. Yep.
And each one has a specific department or division, is that what?
Yep, programs.
Each
Yep.
one of those 5,
So 2 of them are child protective services.
okay,
One of them, I didn't mention this, is the Hope Team, that's the foster care expansion and kinship home recruitment, as well as the assisting of the homeless population. That was a position that we added last year or the year before. And then the other one is the one that I'm speaking about that oversees the combination of placement services, which is foster care and adoption, as well as preventive services. It's those 2 programs that I would like to be able to pull that apart. They were, when I started as a caseworker, that would have been overseen by a total of 3 supervisors. Between preventive was divided into 2 teams, and there was a foster care supervisor. So
did that go away when you went to Berkshire? Same company.
there have been other, prior to that, there were other shifts that led to decreasing the staff in that title. We also have a senior account clerk currently that has really, I heard Tina make one of these references, has grown with the position and has taken on duties that are in excess of what the senior account clerk has. The knowledge that this person has and the programming that they're working with. We would like to decrease the senior account clerk title by 1 and add a bookkeeper. Difference in pay on that is $6,802. Again, it would be 75% reimbursed. That is something that we worked with personnel on. We had initially looked at a different title, but it wasn't something that was within the county structure, and so it was personnel that recommended that be as established as a bookkeeper. I also have recommended adding a deputy commissioner. I believe that this is the best way for you as a board to plan to succeed me with my retirement. I think that it would be appropriate to have a deputy commissioner work alongside of me for a year, and I would see that as needing to start in July of 2024. That would also be a position that would be reimbursed the 75% rate. Our funding allows us to claim for that. It is open. At this point, I see that as being, that is another position, but it would be up to the board and to my successor to determine whether or not a deputy commissioner was necessary moving forward after I had been replaced. The last thing that I had recommended was a cleaner of some nature. Again, this was a title that we came up with working with personnel, and it really was around the things that happen throughout the year that we have no one between Department of Social Services, Buildings and Grounds, or DPW that has it within their job description to fulfill. Specifically, when we have cars that get soiled, where it could be feces, it could be vomit, any of those kinds of things. There's a lot of pushback and trying to find somebody to be able to do that. Talking that through with county administrator and in a different group, we talked about just the overall maintenance of all of the carpool vehicles, and that being recommended. So that is something I supported. Doesn't need to be my department. Did you have any?
There you go. I'm doing that in the budget.
We all set you. You're all set.
Yeah.
Any questions for Tim?
Thanks so much. Productive day. Are we done?
Do we have any other business? Okay.
Yeah.